Good evening. How are you? This is myself, John Flannery, here, willing to talk, and have to do it inside because it's raining outside. Had a busy day. Got some things done with one of my clients. It was a very constructive period of time. So, what's on my mind today? I don't know if you have followed what we have done in America to Native Americans from when we first landed here and ever after. And the reason we were so abusive at the beginning actually was because of an international legal reason, which is if you come upon land that is uninhabited, then you can seize it and take it in your name. It was not uninhabited, and these people were, quote, in the way of the legal license to seize the land, but they did so anyhow. And that story we know. Now, the interest I've had in it goes back over. First, I knew some people in New York who were Native Americans, and I was fascinated by their culture and found Joseph Campbell and read some of his material. And then when I was working on the Hill and I was chief of staff, we had some Native Americans who sought to have the Department of Indian Affairs certify them as the tribe they were and have access to that land. Ages ago, when I ran for Congress, I solicited the views of Native Americans in Northern Virginia. And it was kind of interesting because we would meet at a bowling alley, and we got things done, and then we'd continue to talk. My parents had shoes and bowling bags and things like that. I only occasionally went with them. I was a so-so bowler. My dad was really good. My brother was too. So I don't know, these little bits and pieces and all the things I've read over the years, particularly about what Andrew Jackson did to Native Americans, what America did to Native Americans, is pretty sad. And recently I had a conversation with a cousin on Holly's side of the family. And when I was trying to mimic a chant, a Native American chant, he took it as an offense. That I was giving offense, and he didn't know my history. But what he did do is he prompted me to think about it more, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but that ribbon on my hand reminds me of when, as a Boy Scout, I did some bead work like a lot of other kids, and it kind of stuck with me, the symbolism of it, the craft of it, and so forth. So why am I mentioning all this today? Well, there are a lot of stories that I could talk about today, and each one is important and usually a distortion of what is good for America. But I want to focus on only one story, and it involves Native Americans in Arizona. There is a place there, and I'm going to use the notes that that I made. There's a place, Oak Flat. And Oak Flat apparently is not only a long time religious and sacred location for Native Americans, but it is under siege. And if you remember the story of the Trail of Tears, it went on for, 60,000 people moved across 8 or 9 states, and I think I can put up a picture of that effort. And they have this sacred land in Arizona, and it turns out that underneath this land there is an enormous supply of copper. And there are those who want to dig up 2 miles of the sacred land, that 2 miles wide, and 1,000 feet beneath the surface. Now, even an amateur naturalist knows that there's all sorts of possibilities, not just the religious and sacred concerns that are the worship of these Native Americans, but that what can happen to aquifers and what we can release as we climb down into it, and we can never reclaim the land again. But here's the kicker that reminds us of the Trail of Tears kind of thinking in America, in which Native Americans, though we make a deal with them, it's really not a serious deal. So Congress in 2014 swapped this land, that is the Native American sacred land, for other land, so that a mining company could take over and mine this copper. It's outrageous. And how did the Native Americans respond? They responded, as you might expect, by protest, but they also went to court. And this came to a head in the last several days, if you will. A U.S. district judge named Logan considered the temporary restraining order that was sought by the tribes and decided that the merits were on their side and issued a temporary restraining order that would be in place, he said, unless and until the Supreme Court changed it in some way or other. The record was clear what this would mean to Native Americans. Now, the company is a Chinese company, and I wish I had a grand jury, because I'd look a little closely at this thing. This thing's been going on from 2014 to now. Do I have any evidence that something wrong happened? I have this evidence, that as has been the offense in the past for Native Americans to watch their land disappear like a morning mist in the face of an economic opportunity for the white man against the red man, pardon the expression, and who comes out in the short place when it involves these natural minerals? Why isn't it up to the Native Americans to choose to do with what is on the land they have for whatever purpose that they want it? And the answer is, America generally is prepared to destroy everything around us as if it means nothing and it can somehow be replaced. This will not be replaced. This will be a large eyesore on the world. And so you may then ask, okay, so where does this stand? The judge did this, I believe it was on May the 5th, upheld the order, and the Native Americans continued to protest. And then in the last 24 hours, the Supreme Court looked at the case to determine whether or not they will take the case, take briefing from the parties, that is arguments, hear the oral argument, and make a decision to uphold the injunction against mining or to permit it to go forward. Now, in a cowardly fashion, and in a fashion that I don't exactly understand because of who decided what, is that apparently Alito had a conflict and did not vote on it, okay? Only 2 members of the Supreme Court were concerned about this. And I give them credit for this. I don't know their motivation because nobody's written anything. That is, no member of the court wrote anything. It was a summary decision. 2 members of the court said, this is important and we should at least have an argument on it. One was Thomas and one was Gorsuch. Now, I could, through my experience observing these men, I suppose, find a past experience that accounts for this. Now, in the case of Gorsuch, I have the sense that it is that he's experienced and believes something about the suffering of the Native American experience. The Thomas, I don't know, but give the devil his due. Both of them would have heard the case. They didn't say how they would decide it, but they would have heard the case. The rest of the court, Roberts, Barrett, the 3 liberals, they all fall out and deny a request for the Supreme Court to hear this argument. And so now, within, I think, 60 days, if some EPA rule does not stop this, they're going to lose this sacred religious ground. And it's going to be in the hands of this Chinese company, and that company is going to just destroy the landscape and take all the copper out of it. And I don't know what provisions there are for where and to whom the copper is sold, but this is a lion share of copper. It's upsetting to me, and it may be to you, because we know the sorry story of how Native Americans have been treated here. It's not a simple past, but there's been some terrible brutality. There have been enormous lies told them. There have been cons telling them one thing and then another. And when I was down in Georgia, we took a week not too long ago, and we traveled around a little bit. And there are some tribes that did not join the Trail of Tears and that stayed there. And they have tracked the mixture of blood among Native Americans, and they still have a healthy contingent there. But if you've ever been to any reservations, you see the difference. If you're ever in Santa Fe, New Mexico, you might rent a car, you probably have one if you're there in Santa Fe, and go out and visit some of the reservations. It is a glorious drive, but you see a mixture of success and of challenge to the people who are there. And the question of alcoholism is not some bad joke that should be the subject of a cartoon. There's a great poet, and I'm blocking on his name, so forgive me, but he writes about this when he's sober and when he's drunk, and it's plainly he captures one aspect of it. But a lot of it is also what we do that compromises education and the existence of Native Americans. And there are those that would hope that by living here and developing families, that they'll gradually be less visible in our community. This says something pretty ugly if we put ourselves in a mirror like this and see that there are others who would do these kinds of things. And it's kind of interesting. There's a church that talks about this particular problem and this particular incident, and they said that they support the Native Americans in this church because they're familiar with the notions of the Holy Land. So somebody else's notion of what is sacred and holy has a feeling in other religions. And any of the religions, if you look at what they say and when followed carefully, can be an illuminating experience. As you know, I don't believe in the religion itself, but the ethics and the caring and I think are important. And here's the other thing. Though I don't believe in those things, I do know that it matters very much to the Native Americans that their views and their religious practices be protected and preserved. So if in the bargain, they not only compromise their religious and sacred belief systems, but they also cheat them on the land, trading land, and I'd sure like to look at that land. I wish I had a grand jury to look at this. What that land is worth that they got in exchange for the land that has all this copper buried there that a Chinese company is now going to exploit, it's terrible. We live in a dangerous time in America in which the value of life, the value of respect for others, the discrimination that is cast about, sometimes as simple as color, people harking back to cowboys and Indian shows when they were a kid, as if that was some sort of documentary of what happened, much more complicated than that. And if I could tell you anything in Arizona, it would be to write to your people and say, you have to stop this. After all this, have you no soul? Have you no caring for other people? Do you have no respect? Is everything available for sale? And apparently, for some, it is. And this is just one touch point in the failure of America presently to make right choices. And some may not believe it, certainly Trump does not. But when we are full of caring for others, we are better ourselves. It's not a magic trick, but it's true. It's absolutely true. There's something that flows through us that surprises us when we help someone else, because we are not separated one from the other. And I'm not talking necessarily about the Gaia principle, but we are all connected to everything that's around us. And we do something like this, religious or not. It's a sin against humankind. It's a sin against the land. It is a terrible offense against man and woman and child. So those are a couple of my observations. It may be a little different. There are other things I would talk about today, but I just couldn't get this out of my head. And I hope you'll think about it as well in this case and going forward. So good evening. And tomorrow maybe it'll be dry. I'll be out on the road and I'll talk to you there. All the best. Bye-bye.